How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the OB broadcast. After a bit of a brief hiatus, apologies for that, but we are back now. I just wanted to update a few quick things before I get into it. Firstly, my phone died. As it turns out, I guess phones sometimes just die. The other day, I was watching the Flat Earth documentary on Netflix, which is phenomenal, by the way. It's so brilliant. It's like this perfect, I guess, intersection of it's scientific and also like funny, but it's also sympathetic, and it's just like the perfect mix of the three. It's actually such a good watch. To sum it up briefly, it basically follows two particular people, mainly two, but a variety of different figureheads, if you will, of the flat Earth movement, and it's really, really interesting to see, what they believe, how they've come to that conclusion, and how similar and how different they all are to each other. It's actually really, really interesting. Highly recommend it. It's pretty short. It's only like an hour and a bit, but it is definitely a great watch, especially if you're like my dad, who's only just getting around to watching Breaking Bad, and you're watching all those really intense bits, and you sometimes go, man, I just need to, this is too intense. I need to take a break. And it's short and quick, and it's nice to break up another TV show with that. Anyway, so I was watching that. I think it's called Behind the Curve, or Beyond the Earth's Curve, or something to that effect. You can basically just punch in Flat Earth documentary. And I was watching that, and the home phone rang, and I put down my phone, put it on charge because I was watching Netflix on my phone like a pleb. I don't know why I'm partial to that. I think I prefer it, not because of the smaller screen, because I have an affinity for small screens through playing so many Nintendo handhelds. I think the reason is because we have like shocking internet. Every now and again, I can just sort of turn off the Wi-Fi and use my mobile data just to get through that, bit that I don't want to see buffering every 10 seconds. So I put my phone down, put it on charge, and I go and answer the phone, and I come back. Phone's not working. It's just stopped. It's not turning on. It doesn't do anything. It's dead. So I left it on charge. I tried turning it on. I tried soft resetting, hard resetting. But basically, there's nothing I can do to that phone, which really, really sucks, especially since there's probably like some data on there, like photos and stuff that weren't automatically backed up onto the SD card. But, it is what it is. There's, nothing I can really do from this point. But the thing that sucks is it's, I think, $400 to buy out the rest of my contract to get a new phone, or like $350 to get it repaired. So it's really just a much of a muchness. So at the moment, I've only just managed to pull out my old SD card, my old phone that can't hold a charge. That'll get to 100%. You take it off and it'll just die. And I've got my SIM card in that, so at least I'm not missing calls. But yeah, so that is one thing, because I had a bunch of things on my phone's like Notepad app, and notes for radio segments, and also topics of conversation for the podcast. So there's a bunch of stuff there that I can't necessarily remember that's gone, which does suck. Any setback like that's a bit of a pain. I know it's a real first world problem, but you can still go, I wish it didn't happen. The other thing is the beginning of the last podcast, I was talking about Kitten, and I said by the next podcast I would either have one, it would be dead, or what was the third outcome? I can't remember. Anyway, the long and short of it is the cat was and still is in rehab, so they're not releasing it until it weighs a certain amount, because it was like extremely malnourished. So I'm on the list for people to be contacted when it's of releasing weight and age. So hopefully in a couple of podcasts time, I'll have an update on that. But basically today I'm going to be talking about, I want to talk about Monster Hunter World. I want to talk about Pokemon Sun and Shield and the Umbrella Academy. I know it's all like, super nerdy garbage like TV shows and games, but they are all pretty different, and they're all pretty interesting. So I guess I'll start off with Monster Hunter World. So I picked it up recently because it was on sale, and I not rejoined, but I logged into Steam after a while, and I noticed I had a bit of money left over in my wallet, and I picked up Steam. I picked up Monster Hunter World, and it's one of those games that's always been in the back of my mind that maybe you should look into picking it up. But 100%, the biggest reason I got it, not because it was on sale, but I remember seeing some advertising saying that they were doing a crossover with Geralt from The Witcher. And I played The Witcher 3. I thought it was phenomenal. It was awesome. I loved it. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then when I saw it on sale, I thought, worlds are colliding. I may as well just jump into it and go for it. And it's a really strange game. Not strange as in like the concept and how you play, but it's more strange in regards to like why you play. Because I've been playing it and I haven't figured out why. I'm on the PC, and obviously and thankfully I got the PC, not the PS4, because if I had got it on the PS4, I would have joined just too late to get all of the Witcher stuff, which is the biggest reason I'm getting it. So I thought I would get the PC version, have it on the PC, have less things cluttering out the PlayStation, give it more room for exclusive titles like Spider-Man. Oh, that was the other thing I was talking about. I'll put a footnote for Spider-Man. I know I'm completely mischaracterizing myself with all this Spider-Man stuff. Like, it's not as important to me as I make it out. However, I do like Spider-Man. Anyway, the biggest reason I wanted to pick up Monster Hunter was for the Witcher stuff. And the PC is yet to get the Witcher stuff, so I thought that will give me enough time to play through the game, get all the basics, get up to any sort of minimum requirements, so that when it does come to the PC, I'm ready to Geralt it up. But other than that, I'm still not sure why I'm playing. The closest I've never I know this is one of those games that's just got like a cult following, and it's not the biggest, but the people that love it like really love it. And as an outsider looking in, I just don't get it. The closest thing I can equate it to, and this is not fair, but it's like I've only played a limited number of games, so there's only so many things I can equate it to. But it's sort of like Dark Souls. Like most people have played Dark Souls, but this just feels like you're taking those big scary bosses from Dark Souls and you're just putting them one after the other in like 4 or 5 different areas in sort of this like, I don't know, it's not particularly like technologically advanced. Like they're still using like zip lines and that sort of stuff, so it's like sort of steampunky, but not really. I don't know, it's kind of hard to pin down. But that's basically all you do. I mean, I know it's like, oh, wow, you hunt monsters in the game called Monster Hunter? Obviously. No, but like, there's really not much story behind it. Like, maybe there is, a lot that I wasn't picking up on, because this is the first one that I've played. But you start off being a hunter from the old world going to the new world, which is largely just like untamed land. And you're like surveying and researching and slaying monsters. And there's one big dude, like the Zora Magdaros, and that's sort of like your focal point for most of it. But it just sort of feels like a monster slaying simulator, which is maybe what it's for. And it's very strange because I have been enjoying it, but usually the sorts of games that give me enjoyment are the ones that have, some sort of story, some sort of through line. Whereas this is just like, kill this. Okay, now kill this. Now capture this or kill it. Now do capture this, and now kill this. And while look, I'm not bashing it, because as simplistic as it sounds, it's really, really fun. The game has like heaps and heaps of like mini tutorials, but it also sort of throws you in the deep end. Like they just say, okay, here's a bunch of stuff, figure it out. And it's one game that I've noticed is really good at, the longer you play, the more things are introduced to you. It's not like, here is all these like end game things, and you're not even going to be able to find them until, after a certain amount of time. It's really good at gating you. So if you if you were like me, you had never played the game before, you're looking, as you kill new monsters and do new story missions, you unlock new armors, and you choose ones, or at least if you're playing like I did, you look at ones that A, look cool, and B, give you sort of like any health or attack bonuses. And then you play a little more, and then you start to go, oh, okay, well, this is the sort of weapon I have. These are the sorts of stats I want, so that's the sort of armor I should go for. And then, after you get to a certain point in the story, they say, hey, here are high-rank versions, which are basically just stronger, tougher versions of existing enemies, and high-rank armors, which, give you better stats and better... they're not called perks or powers. Sort of like, little passive abilities on your different armor sets, right? So after you get to that point, you go, oh, okay, now I'm going to start fighting high rank monsters and getting a high rank armor, right? And then you get a high rank armor set, so you get one complete set. I went for the Gar-Odin, the big red dog thing. That particular armor set, because it favored the weapons I used. And then you get to the point where, okay, this, armor and weapon setup has served me well for now, but I need to start mixing and matching. So, you want a bit of crit here and a bit of elemental damage. And so you start mixing it up. You're not just doing one set, you're using a bit from everyone. And then you go on to decorations, which are just, small little jewels that give you other little passive bonuses that you can stack up. And then there's augmentation. Basically, unless you play the game, that's all just, gibberish. But what I'm saying is that it's very good at saying, okay, here is everything in the universe that you need to know about armor. All right, here you go. And as you get a little further, they say, okay, well, here are some other things. They don't just give you like a massive screen full of grayed out things that you can't unlock yet. It says, here is everything. And then as you get a little further in, they give you a little more, and a little more. And it's a really good way to, at least the way I think, it's a really good way to do progression. Because that way you're not, scrolling to the end and looking, oh, okay, if I want this best armor, I need to fight 3 of these and 8 of these. And then you go and try and find those. And you get your butt kicked because endgame armor requires endgame materials, and for that you need to fight endgame bosses. I don't know if bosses is the right word because they're all like monsters, but you get the general gist. The other thing is that it's got like a massive array of weapons, and here's one of the biggest downfalls for me: the amount of weapons. And the reason I say that is not because it's a bad thing, but it's bad the way I play games. Like, there are so many weapons. There's a whole bunch of ranged weapons, there's some melee weapons, and then there are some that combine the two. And I've only used one, and it's the dual swords. And the only reason I use the dual swords is because they are very quick to strike. And I can't play games with like big heavy weapons. I know that like sometimes they're just better, and sometimes they're more fun. But in every, like, again, I'll go back to Dark Souls as a comparison because it's the closest thing I can compare it to. All those games, you never see me using like a big heavy axe or a mace. It's always dual swords or like single quick things, because I'd much prefer to get, 3 or 4 small hits in and then get out of the way, instead of like charging up a big massive smash that's going to do heaps of damage, but you're locked into an animation for 10 seconds. Can't deal with that. Maybe it's because of the way I play. Maybe I'm like too aggressive. I'm too quick to run in and then attack and then try and get out of the way. And, I might have a lot more fun if I just learned how to play those different weapons. But honestly, it's not fun. I hate being stuck in animations. It's just the worst, especially when, enemies are so quick to move around and jump all over the place. But there is a very good variety of weapons. And it's not just, super generic stuff like, oh, small sword, big sword, long sword, big hammer, axe. They sort of follow those tropes, but they're all, really different. And again, this is purely from what I've seen other people playing in lobbies or in squads, because I've never played any of them. I think I put in like 10 seconds into each of them in the tutorial to try and find which was the one that felt the most natural. But, from what I understand, there's like a big axe that it transforms in sort of in the same way they do in Bloodborne. So it has 2 different forms. And then there's a Kinsector Glaive, which is sort of like a bow staff, but it has like a little insect, I don't even know how you would describe it. Sort of like a sentient insect pet type thing that lives in the weapon. And you can shoot it at different parts of the enemy, and you get certain like buffs. So all the different weapons are, really, really cool. There's a huge variety. But for me, the biggest problem was I just like quick things, right? I can't deal with it. The game is fun. I don't want to give the impression that, just because there's not necessarily a massive focus on story, that it's not fun. It really is. I guess it's sort of one of those games where it's like a podcast game, right? You listen to this, or like a good... Don't be so self-deprecating. No, but like you would put on a podcast or some music or a TV show and play Monster Hunter while you're watching that. And I think if you're like me, you're not playing with other people, you're just playing by yourself, that's it's a great avenue for that. Especially since I don't know if I'm the only person that's like this. I'm sure I'm not. I've just gotten to the point where if I'm playing a game, I need to be listening to something else. Music sometimes will work in a pinch, but I like to be watching something on Netflix or someone on YouTube. I just need something else going on in the background. Otherwise, I just can't enjoy the game. I really don't know what it is. I'm sure I've mentioned it on the podcast once before, but I don't know. It's maybe I look at like YouTube as like a checklist. Like you've got certain videos and a certain amount of content that you need to watch. And if you're playing a game and you're not watching something, you're being inefficient. I know it makes no sense at all, but I'm sure most people can relate to listening to a podcast and doing something at the same time. But yeah, it's just gotten to the point where I need to be watching or listening to something while I'm playing a game, anything really. And that's very much a reason why I like Monster Hunter. It's like the perfect game for that. You can be listening. You don't need to focus too much on what's going on in terms of like the sound of Monster Hunter. Obviously, you're going to be able to pick up on not cues, but telegraphed attacks. You might be able to hear them. Like I said, I play usually listening to something else. So if there is any aspect of like, if you hear this sound, it means it's going to do this attack. Maybe there's something like that. I wouldn't know. But it has been really good. There's very few times where I've been, I don't want to say drawn to what's going on in the game, but to put it nicely, there's been very few times where I've been distracted from what I was watching by some content that was going on in the game that wasn't fighting monsters. Like you have, the handler, which is basically your partner, and then like some admirals and bosses or whatever, in terms of like head honchos, not like fighting bosses. And they'll say like, oh, hey, you've been doing good job doing the hunt. Go and kill some more monsters. Here's the new quest. It's very linear. It's sometimes a little ambiguous on what you have to do. And maybe this is not a big issue for seasoned veterans, but at the moment, I'm trying to unlock something called the Research Commission ticket. Basically, it's a reward for finishing all of the optional quests. So you've got assigned quests, which is like your story, optional, which is optional, events, which are like time limited, investigations, which are sort of like replayable, they give you specific rewards, and then special assignments, which you can imagine are just like special events. And I've been trying to clear all the optional ones to get this ticket because it lets you make one of the end game things that I'm trying to get. And I've noticed, and this is not just a me thing, like I've been looking it up online. Firstly, it doesn't say anywhere how to get this research ticket. It's all, you have to look it up. And that is one of the issues I find with the game. If you're at the upgrade screen, it says, oh, you need this, this, and this to upgrade, your sword or your armor. They won't necessarily tell you unless you've found what it is that you need it. So, for example, this charm that I'm trying to get, what I need is one ticket and one gem. But it doesn't say that, it just has a bunch of question marks for it. The only reason I know is because I looked it up. But my biggest issue is that the gem comes from a monster I fought before. Just because I've not got one, it doesn't mean I don't know what the monster is. Sure, if you've never even seen that monster, maybe just leave it as question marks until you figure out what it is. But the Xeno I've fought multiple times. I know what it is, so it should say what I need to make it. But anyway, going back to the biggest complaint that I have is just some level of ambiguity. So to get this charm, I need the ticket. To get the ticket, I need to beat all the optional quests. Makes sense, right? The thing is, there's 2 levels of completed quests. Like if you're looking through them, there's like a little blue label that says, oh, you've completed all the level 1 missions and all the level 2 missions. But what it doesn't tell you straight away is, and look, maybe it does tell you somewhere and I just missed it, but what's not very clear is that the label can either be blue or red, and if it's blue or orange. And if it's blue, it means you've beat all the ones that you've unlocked so far, but there are more to unlock. And if it's red, obviously orange. There's that's it. But some of the missions are on rotation. Some of them don't show up straight away. Some of them you have to do these really long chain quests to complete, and some of them I've noticed just disappear. So I've got on my laptop, got like a checklist of the different missions that I have to do, and I'll look it up on my screen, and it'll say a whole bunch of them, but not the one that I'm not the one on the checklist. So, for example, a Portent of Disaster was the most recent example. I looked at it and I said, okay, this is the next thing that I need to beat. Go over to the game, it's not there. I thought, oh, that's strange. I'll look it up further. These are the requirements to complete, to unlock the mission. I've done all of those requirements and more. And I look at the rewards for the mission. Portent of Disaster gives you a mantle, which is like a cape, which gives you certain buffs for a little bit of time. And I already unlocked it. So for some reason, I had unlocked the mission, played it, completed it, got the rewards, and now it's no longer showing up. And this was just after the same thing happened with a different mission. I beat it, I completed it, and I went, oh, where's the Portent of Disaster? I don't know. And that came back, and another one disappeared. So it's very strange. All I can say is that I hope it has remembered which ones I have and haven't completed, because I think I'm only about, of the maybe 100 and something that there are to do, I think I'm only about 7 away from unlocking this last thing. And hopefully it remembers, because I just hate games with bugs. This is why I'm so fond of, like, retro stuff, where what you got was it. There was no updates, and if there was like, if there was an exploit in there, hey, that's in your game. Should have figured it out. And if there was like, some game-breaking issue, it would be fixed. Like, it wouldn't be sent out with this issue. Have there ever been any games that have been recalled because they were like unplayably broken? I think not. I feel like you would have heard about it, or you would like have it as just general knowledge. Just like, oh, did you know the second Metroid game was recalled because you could not complete it due to a bug? No, I don't think so. Anyway, that's the general gist of my biggest complaint, is that, hey, sometimes it's a little ambiguous on what you have to do and what requirements there are. So lots of fun. I think if you've got friends who like to play Monster Hunter as well, it'll be great to, all get together and, find a specific enemy, just, take turns slapping this big dragon with a sword. Don't take that out of context. And, just have a bit of a chat while you're doing it. Just sort of, I don't want to say mindless fun, because it's not mindless, but just sort of background fun while you're having a chat. Because it definitely does. It is one of those games where, like most things, if you you get up to the end game and you go back to the beginning, you can just sort of like wipe out these like basic level dudes, which is sometimes fun when you need to go farm up basic items. I think that's basically all I have to say about Monster Hunter. It is very, very limited in what there is. It's basically just hunting monsters, but it's fun. It's fun to go, oh, I want this set of armor. I have to go kill 3 of these. It's a good checklist game. If you're a checklist person, if you like checklists and that's how you operate in your day-to-day, go, oh, I've got this, this, and this to do at work, and then I have to do this and this, and I'm done. If you like to operate like that, the way I do, you're probably going to like this game, because the majority of it is, oh, I need to kill 3 Jagras to get this armor. Okay, gonna go and do that. It's very good. Speaking of games, did you hear that Pokemon Sword and Shield was announced? I am very excited. I'm not even a little bit skeptical or hesitant, even though I should be, and I'll explain to you why. So basically, I've been like a very big Pokemon fan for a long time. Started playing, first game was Silver, back on the Game Boy Color or Advance, one of the two. But basically, I've been playing since way back when, and I've played all the way up. I think I've played one of every generation game, if not one of each game, like total. And yeah, it's just fun. I think it's interesting. I can go back and play like the really old Pokemon games, but some other like really old games I struggle to go back just because of like how much graphic and hardware has changed. But I think that's mostly just a nostalgia thing. But yeah, I've been playing the games forever. I was playing competitive for a few years there. Not good enough to get any sort of like recognition or, results on ladder that are particularly noteworthy. But, basically enough to not get stomped online and also like beat your friends, right? that was basically it. You know that like intermittent level where basically you're like the best of all of your friends group at Smash Bros. And you like, you watch all the videos and you know all the tech and you know all like the, combos and the matchups and stuff. And you're going to like your local tournaments and you're doing okay, but you're not winning, but you're not like getting smashed. But you can go back and beat all your friends. That's basically where I was with like competitive Pokemon. So like all the people at school, because it was a surprising amount that liked Pokemon, I knew all the stuff, right? And for whatever reason, this garbage is just drilled into my head. So I'm a big Pokemon fan. However, as big as a fan as I am, the most recent couple games haven't been huge for me. Didn't pick up Let's Go. I have a Switch, but I think it just mostly comes down to like elitism. And elitism is so bad. Like it's the worst thing ever. But there's just a part of me that goes, oh, I really just can't get down with this Pokemon Let's Go stuff. I played Pokemon Go on the phone, but all the Let's Go, it's like, firstly, it's going back to Gen 1, which I hate. I'm so sick of going back to Gen 1. I'm so sick of seeing like, even though like some of my favorite Pokemon are from Gen 1, I hate it's like, oh, Charizard and Arcanine and Golem and Alakazam. It's just, I'm so sick of seeing those Gen 1 Pokemon, you have no idea, and going back there. Every other game, it's like, oh, should we just tack on Gen 1? Yeah, sure, why not? I'm sick of it. And the worst bit is, people that have been playing for as long as I have, they're the vocal minority that are saying, yeah, keep going back to Kanto, I love it. Anyway, I didn't pick up Let's Go because it's Kanto, and it's just like a very simplified version. And the game makes sense. It's like a very, very smart way for Nintendo to bridge the gap between the core RPGs and Pokemon Go. And a whole bunch of people, some of which I know, who have never played a Pokemon game before, except for Pokemon Go, bought a Switch, or if they already had a Switch, bought Let's Go and played it and enjoyed it. So I think it was a very smart decision as sort of a bridge. But for me, it wasn't for me. And the previous game, the previous core game, which was Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, I still got it in my DS. And I just never finished it. Because I played Sun and Moon, and I thought they were pretty fun. I liked the new mechanics, I liked the new world, I thought the story was kind of lame, I thought it was a little repetitive, and what was the other complaint I had? I don't know, but heaps of great changes, like mechanically, visually, in terms of the Pokemon, lots of great changes, but it just got a little boring relative to some of the other great ones, like Gen 3 and Black and White. But when Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon came out, it was basically the same game. It was so painful to play because you had just done all this stuff before. And there was like a few changes, but they were like negligible. It got to this is how you can tell that it was a little stale. Because even for someone like me who enjoys the games as much as they do, I had a Celebi on my team because I bought Pokemon Silver just because I could redeem a Celebi in my game. I had a Celebi on my team, and I had a shiny. I caught a random shiny just progressing through the game. I had both of those on my team, and Celebi is one of my favorite Pokemon, which is why that's noteworthy. Had no inclination to finish. I got to the point where it was either just before or just after you fight the cover legendary, the Ultra Necrozma or whatever it is, and I just never picked it back up. I could not be bothered. My sister and I were playing it. We both we had a copy each. We were playing at the same time. We just got sick of it. It was just like the game we'd played like 9 months ago. It was painful. Obviously, it wasn't 9 months, but you get the idea. And it's a shame because, from what I understand, there was like some cool stuff in the end game with like the Rainbow Rocket, where it was like leaders or team members from all the like villainous teams throughout the games all plonked together. Never got up to it because there was no interest there. So those are the reasons why I should be skeptical about the new Pokemon game. In saying that, not even remotely skeptical. Sword and Shield comes out later this year, and it looks to be based on Great Britain or England. It is called the Galar region, and it looks awesome. England's like, not that I've ever been, but it's one of my favorite places. Visually, I think it's really pretty. I like the weather because it's usually very cool. And I like a lot of the TV and media that comes out of there. Some of my favorite shows and some of my favorite comedians are all from the UK. So that's one huge boon to why I think this game is going to be good. It's going to be a core game on the Switch, which means you're going to be able to play it on the go and at home on the big screen. It's going to have more power behind it because it's a more powerful machine. I think that's going to be, obviously, a huge boon to it. It looks really fun. The starters are a little iffy, and this is the thing. I can't tell if every time you see a starters, like whenever this time comes around, every 2-year cycle, you see the new starters for the new game. I can't tell if, like, last time I looked at them and thought, they're all sort of a bit ugly. I'm used to these old ones. I can't tell if that happens every cycle or if, like, these ones are just particularly ugly. So the 3 starters, you've got the fire type, which is Scorbunny, which is a very fast anthropomorphic rabbit type thing. There's a Grookey, which is sort of like a monkey that looks like it's got a stick. So it's either going to be a sport dude or like a drum music dude, probably. And then there's the last one, which is it's like the water type. It's called Sobble, and it's, I guess, sort of like a newt chameleon fish type thing. And look, I think when I first saw them, I thought they were kind of ugly. Now, I'm used to them. They've been out for like a week and a bit. I'm getting used to the idea that they are legitimate. I think they're cool. They're fine. They're cool and fine. I think I'm not going to touch Scorbunny ever with a 10-foot pole because in terms of like starters, I've never really been a big fan of fire types, and not my thing. I think I normally go for the water type, but I'm more than likely going to go for Sobble. I don't know, I know I prefaced that and made it sound like I was going to say I'm going for the grass type, but I'm going for the water. I do think the grass and the water both have the potential to look and be really cool. What sucks is that I saw, and I'm sure everyone's like seen it at this point, a whole bunch of like rumored leaks, which were in fact like very good fakes. What saddens me is back in, was it X and Y, so that's Gen 6, they had these leaked final evolutions. And I remember specifically the final evolution for Froakie was just this like fat toad with bubbles around its neck and something like that. And I thought, oh, they're really ugly. And then Greninja and Delphox and Chestnut came out, and they were really cool. I'm worried we're going to get the inverse because these leaked ones looked really, really cool. Scorbunny was this sort of like electric or steel fire, like fast moving dude. And Grookey was just like this, a big ape with a big stick, like you would imagine. And then I don't even know how they came to this conclusion, whoever drew them, but Sobble, which is sort of this newt, turned into this quadrupedal Loch Ness monster. Sort of, okay, if you know Pokemon, imagine Lapras crossed with Samurott. Not that they were really cool, but I'm worried that the starters are going to get worse than the leaks. And look, this is just like the problem with games or like with this type of game. People are always going to be more creative because there's more of them. So you're going to see a whole bunch of like fan art and like, fake leaks. And because there's so many, by virtue of the fact that there's so many of them, you're stuck with what Nintendo gives you. And you're going to look at all the better ones and say, oh, I wish it was like that. And you're going to ignore all the worst ones and say, ugh, I'm glad it wasn't that. But more on Sword and Shield, there have been like a whole bunch of like rumored leaks. What I think was interesting is that from April last year, there was a leak that was saying the titles of the game and something about the cover legendaries and also the region it would be set in. And that was from April last year, which is a, crazy long time ago. But yeah, there's more and more leaks. I'm not going to talk about them because there's enough of that. If you want to watch, the coverage, if you want to watch the full Pokemon coverage, just go subscribe to PokeMMD. Right, and anything that is important or interesting or both, he'll cover it. But yeah, it's that really fun time of every 2-year cycle where you get to get excited about the new games, all the new Pokemon being announced. There's like leaks, there's rumors, Cora has the magazine that comes out with all the new information, but it always gets leaked like 7 days early. They're going to slowly trickle down more Pokemon, maybe a new type, maybe a new evolution. It's really fun, It's probably, and I think most people are like this at this point if you've been playing Pokemon as long as I have. This part where you're, seeing what type of Pokemon are coming out and what new combinations of types are like, oh, maybe we'll get like a fire electric type. That's more fun than, once you've got the game and you've finished it and you're like doing all the post game stuff. This is the most fun time. I'll quickly interject with that brief thing about Spider-Man that I wanted to talk about, and I'm gonna restate what I said before, that I've mischaracterized myself. I'm not not a huge Marvel fan. I don't love everything that they produce. I don't have Spider-Man paintings up on my I have one framed picture, but it's like Spider-Man and Daredevil. Look, I'm not doing a great job. I'm not like a big Marvel fanboy. Hey, Captain Marvel's out. Haven't seen it. Haven't seen any Iron Man since Iron Man 1 because I was a child, and I looked up the spoilers for Infinity War because I didn't care. However, I like Spider-Man. And this is not a Spider-Man bit. This is like I'm a turning into my dad and I don't like it bit. Because the other day we all sat down and we watched Into the Spider-Verse, which is great. And I'm not going to talk about it because everyone talks about how great Spider-Verse is and you don't need me to say it. However, if you did need me to say it, it's really, really great. It's a lot of fun. It's a great movie. Anyway, after watching that, I was playing some Monster Hunter World, as you would know from the first half hour of this podcast. And I wanted something to watch and listen to while I was playing. As it turns out, Netflix Australia had Spider-Man 2, which is the one with Green Goblin, and they've had that up for a while. And I watched that a while back. But as it turns out, they've only recently added the first... Oh, so this is The Amazing Spider-Man. So this is Andrew Garfield. And so they had The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but they only recently added the first one with the big lizard dude. And, I mean, I know it's common knowledge that, like, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans are bad, but, man, are they bad. I was watching, and there was this one scene where Gwen Stacy was hiding, and her mouth did not move, but a really loud scream played, and I tell you what, she did not make that scream. And there was just, like, so many generic sound effects that look like they've come from... What's that, Is it Audio Jungle? That's like the generic where you find sound effects from. It might be, but look, they were a hair away from using the Wilhelm scream, right? Like that's how bad it was. It was awful. Like I personally didn't think that Andrew Garfield portrayed a compelling Spider-Man. Maybe that's not his fault. He was probably just doing the best with the script that he had. It was not good. It was not enjoyable at all. In saying that, I enjoyed it because it was Spider-Man. And here's the problem. My dad is the sort of dude who will go down to the library, because they still exist, and he'll hire audiobooks and movie DVDs from the library, because that's also something that exists. And he'll do that, and 9 times out of 10, he'll sit through it and he'll watch it and enjoy it. It does not matter how bad it is. If he's picked it up, it means it's got like something action-y on the front, right? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what. Like it could just be like the most on-the-nose, low-hanging fruit thing that you could think about. It's just a picture of, so it's like Harrison Ford's face, like zoomed out in the background with sort of like faded out, and then in the front, it's got like another dude, and he's got a gun that's pointed left, and on the right, coming up from behind him, there's like a black car, or a car, and it's all silhouetted, and there's like a gun somewhere, and the title is just called, I don't know, it like, even if it's called something super lame and generic, like the tagline is, "This time it's personal," and the title, I'm stalling because I can't think of like something like really bad that's not like Avenger, but we'll just go like Paying It Back. Yeah, so up the top, in front of Harrison Ford's face, the movie title is Paying It Back, and the tagline is, "Oh, is this time it's personal?" Is that like a Rocky, or is that like something that's really well known? Or this time there are no second chances. Something super lame like that, It had like no budget at all, and it almost looks like it was a college student film, right? And he'll pick it up and he'll go, "Oh yeah, looks good," and he'll take it home and he'll watch it and go, "Yeah, that's good." And I know this for a fact because there's been multiple times where I've walked past and seen what he's watching and thought, "Give me strength." And there's one time where he said, "Hey, I watched this movie. It was really good. I would like for you to sit down and watch it." And because he was talking to both my mum and myself. And I said, "No way in hell." And he said, "You make us watch all these movies, and I do because they're good. You have to sit down and watch one of mine." It was the worst thing ever. It was just awful. Every single plot point was like so transparent. The point is, I watched the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and I did it knowing it was bad, and I did it anyway. And I'm turning into my dad, and it's a problem. Anyway, I wanted to quickly talk about the Umbrella Academy since we're talking about TV shows. See how well that's segued into one another, and I'll just briefly cover it. You would probably know by listening to these, I have somewhat of an affinity for any TV show that uses the P word. Anytime they say power, it's like, oh, someone's got a power. Is that a power, like a power or like a superpower? Because if it's a superpower, I am into it. It's very hard to turn me off of like a show with superpowers, and it's really good. There are a few issues that I had with it, and the reason I wanted to bring this up in particular is that it has enough good things going for it and enough things that I disliked about it that it sort of hits a middle ground where I think it's interesting to talk about. So the basis of the movie is that across the world on one particular day, 42 women gave birth. And this was significant because none of those women were pregnant when the day started. And all of those kids presumably had superpowers in some capacity. And this one dude, this billionaire, I think his name's like Reginald Hargreaves, I think is what it is. He went through, because he was a philanthropist billionaire, and he tried to adopt as many of them as possible. And he got 7 out of the 42, which is, look, it's not bad. You're trying to buy someone's kid that they've given birth that they didn't realize they were going to have. It's kind of a tall ask. But the general premise is that all the characters, the 7 adopted children, they get back together because the dad, the old guy who adopts them all, he dies. And that gives them an excuse to all get back together once again and for the plot of the story to unfold. The plot itself is really good. There is like one glaring issue with me, and I'll get into that in a bit. But what I particularly like about it is that not only do you have sort of like a dysfunctional relationship between people, because I think dysfunctional relationships, dysfunctional family, it's sort of like a played out TV and movie trope. However, when done well, it's particularly interesting because you've got these people that are, at odds with each other, but they also love each other. And so that does create sort of a genuine conflict, something that feels less contrived. But what I also quite like about it is the fact that all of these different characters, they all have their own unique struggles, and all of those struggles almost always correlate to their powers, right? So one of them, he has the ability to communicate with the dead. But because that's, as you can imagine, would be such a haunting thing to live your life having the voices of dead people all around you, you're seeing dead people, it's quite jarring. So he's a drug addict because of it, because that's sort of the only way that he can find any sort of semblance and peace. And while I think that would be a really interesting character to play, the guy that plays him, his name is it's not Nathan Sheehan, it's something Sheehan. Basically, he plays almost the exact same character in Misfits, which is a bit of a bummer. In Misfits, he plays a guy who cannot die, who is also like a sort of drug addict. It's a little disappointing because they are very, very similar, and you kind of worry that he's getting typecast and pigeonholed. But, he does a very good job portraying that character. And just to give you sort of a better idea, another one of the characters, she is able to say, if she prefaces a sentence by saying, "I heard a rumor," anything that follows that becomes true. So it's sort of like nice brainwashing. But a lot of the conflicts in her life come up because, she has the ability to make people do what she wants. Not only does that affect the relationships around her, but it also makes her question her own life and how much of it is like warranted and how much of it's deserved. You get a false sense of confidence when you're like, very successful as a movie star, but the only reason you are is because you've brainwashed people into giving you particular roles, and maybe even brainwash people into thinking that you did a good job. I don't think too much of that is actually covered in the show. Maybe it'll be more so in season 2, because spoilers, that set up for a season 2. And each character has their own unique struggles that are based on their powers. And I think is really cool. The very, very strong dude, typically speaking, you see strong dudes, good physique, lots of confidence, but him, for plot reasons, is, very reserved and also almost like, self-conscious about himself. If you watch it, you'll pick up on things straight away. What I did like about it is they really did a good job of not leaving things transparent. Like each plot point, each twist and turn, sort of. And look, maybe this is just me not looking with enough of a critical eye, but I found that every time something happened, it was a surprise. Like, oh, now I get it. Sort of like that. You weren't watching the first episode and going, oh, okay, well, I can see this is what's going to happen here and here. They were very good about it. And the biggest issue I had, and I think it's maybe not just me, I don't think this is a hot take, but there is time travel in the show. And I didn't realize that going in. And if I had known going in, I might not have watched it. And it might have been to my detriment, in fairness. But I just have this thing about time travel. I think it's exemplified in the X-Men series, because I have no idea how to watch X-Men. I kind of like the characters. I kind of like the whole mutant thing. It's interesting. Wolverine's cool. Nightcrawler's the best. But it's, basic stuff that everybody knows. But there's a whole bunch of time travel, and I can't tell you how many times I've been confused watching an X-Men show. I think I've probably seen about 4 X-Men movies, and I don't understand any of them, because they're all like time traveling and retconning each other. And you watch one movie and then you watch the next movie and it's like, oh, none of that happened because we went back in time and changed the timeline. I don't like it. And I don't think it's clumsy writing, but I think it makes writing something clumsy. Does that make any sense? I feel like just because of the fact that time travel is such a complicated concept of its own volition, it makes any TV show that incorporates it really clumsy and confusing as a result. And look, it sort of gets annoying. Like, there is one character that can jump through time and space, more or less. And although he was like the coolest character, he was also the most annoying, because he was terrible at communication. And anytime he popped up on screen, you go, oh, man, all of this stuff makes sense. I know what's going on, and now I'm going to have to now I don't know what's going to happen. Now everything's going to change, and I think that's a pretty fair assessment of time travel in TV shows. Some do it good. Like, I remember seeing, I think it was called Looper, and from memory, that did time travel, but it did it in a really good, not complicated way. It was a 2-ish hour movie, and I understood it, so it couldn't have been that complicated. But yeah, they do time travel, and they try and make it not a focal point, but it just inherently is. But that notwithstanding, it is a good show. I think it's definitely well worth the watch. Especially, it's one of those things where you can watch it, and like I said, it sets it up for a second season. You can watch it, and you're not going to be checking back every day, going to the Reddit, going, when's the next season out? I need. You're not going to be ravenous for more episodes. You're going to watch it. You're going to enjoy it more than likely. And then, if you're up for watching a second season, when you see it announced on Netflix, you go, oh yeah, I'll give it a watch. It's not going to be something like The Dragon Prince, where you're waiting, or BoJack Horseman's another one where you're constantly checking for the release dates of new episodes and setting calendars. So, in summary, Monster Hunter World is a very enjoyable game. It looks beautiful. It plays really fun. It has nice, tight, responsive controls. And even if it is a bit complicated, most things will make sense over time. And it's a great way for you to play a game and also catch up on whatever podcasts or TV shows you're enjoying at the moment. Pokemon Sword and Shield, upcoming game. I have very high hopes for, even though the past few have let me down just a little bit. I think the region looks great. I think mechanically it's only getting better and better. And as long as they don't do the thing that they're known for doing, which is introducing a mechanic in one game and removing it in another, like, having Pokemon follow you, or like the Entralink, or basically every Pokemon game has one thing that they add and then remove in the next. But as long as they have Pokemon following me, I'll be happy. And as long as they stick to, somewhat of the same formula, but keep it different enough to be fresh, I think it's going to be a great game. And it has very promising Pokemon designs and a very promising region. And finally, a brief summary of the Umbrella Academy, although you were just listening to it. I think it's a great show. I think it's well worth a watch. I don't think it's going to be awarded, Grammys or, Grammys are music. It's not going to be awarded any type of, best TV show ever produced, but it is a good, enjoyable watch. It's got enough action and enough story to keep you invested and interested throughout it. And it has some great actors doing some great acting and some great storytelling overall. Thank you all for listening. I'll be back next week. Until then, stay safe and don't text and drive.